Well, good afternoon, good morning or good afternoon, depending on what part of the country you're in. And thank you for joining us today for the committee chair and liaison orientation session. As I mentioned previously, all of our lines have been muted. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. When you need to speak, please press *6 to unmute your line. So we will go ahead and get started. Today's presenters are Nathan Medina, the President of the GPA Board of Directors, and Mike Chamberlain, the CEO of the Grant Professionals Association. So Nathan, will you start us off with an overview of what we're going to talk about today?
Sure, thanks, Mike. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. So just to give an overview, this is really an overview of how our committees work and the importance of them. Everything that GPA does, whether it be our events or ethics, leadership development, whatever we do, can all basically be traced back to a committee in some way. The committees connect GPA's activities with our members, our volunteers, our staff, and our board members. So they're really important in keeping us all connected. So one of the things that we'd like to accomplish with our committees is to promote communication, cohesion, and collaboration. Communication in that we're all on the same page and we know what's going on. Cohesion so that we're working together, and collaboration so that we're able to communicate and work together to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish. So that's a general overview of the GPA committees and why they're important to what we're doing.
There are currently 8 committees and 5 task forces. And committees are standing bodies, several of which are dictated by the GPA bylaws and are charged with certain duties and assignments. Task forces are small teams put together to accomplish a specific task in a defined period of time. So what I'm going to do now is spend just a few minutes reviewing the charges of each of the committee and the source of that charge. And by the source, that is where the committee is or task force is coming from and how it relates to either the GPA bylaws or strategic plan. The first committee is the bylaws committee, and its charge is, as you see, to receive and update the GPA bylaws. And their charge comes from the GPA bylaws. The chapter advisory committee provides advice to the CEO and is made up of chapter leaders from each of the 8 regions of GPA. And its charge is really coming from the strategic plan and our efforts to strengthen GPA chapters. The ethics committee maintains the code of ethics and reviews all ethics violations and determines appropriate sanctions. And that group also gets their charge from the GPA bylaws. The next committee is the Finance Committee, also set forth by the GPA bylaws. It reviews the financial performance of GPA, oversees the annual audit and budget process, and recommends financial policies to the Board of Directors. Again, this is a group that is set forth in the bylaws and an important function for the association. The Long Range Planning Committee is responsible for the development of the GPA strategic plan and long range plan. This committee is also set forth in the bylaws and will definitely be an active committee this year as we look forward to developing a new strategic plan for GPA. The nominating committee is, again, responsible for overseeing the recruitment and election process for the Board of Directors. Its charge comes again from the GPA bylaws. And their group is, again, responsible for overseeing the election process for the Board of Directors. The Professional Growth and Development Committee is responsible for developing much of our education and looking forward to the GPA educational curriculum, and its charge comes from the strategic plan in developing GPA as the authority in the grants profession and providing continuing professional development for our members and others in the grants profession. The Publications Committee is the group that provides leadership for all of our publications, specifically the journal, weekly grant news, and strategy papers. They are a very active committee, and again, their charge comes from the strategic plan developing GPA as the authority in the grants profession. There are 5 task forces, as I mentioned. The first one is a governmental advocacy task force. This task force will be launched this year. We'll shortly be calling for volunteers for this task force to develop a process by which, or to identify, what the needs are of GPA as it relates to governmental advocacy. The International Grant Professionals Day Week Task Force has been active in developing and launching IGPD, or International Grant Professionals Day. Again, it's a charge comes from strengthening membership and recognizing GPA as the authority as identified in the strategic plan. For those of you who don't know, please mark March 10th on your calendars as International Grant Professionals Day. The next item is a mentoring task force. That group is continuing its work to develop a professional mentoring program for GPA members. Again, from the strategic plan and strengthening membership. The hope is that task force will be able to complete its work this year. The Pioneer Award is specifically assigned to develop the awards criteria and to select the recipients for the Pioneer Awards for grant makers and others who support the grants profession. And lastly, our social media committee task force assists staff with the implementation of the social media component of all of our communication strategies, and that again comes from the strategic priority of focusing on improving communication. The next thing we want to cover briefly is some changes that have happened in the last year as a result of the update to the GPA volunteer policy. As many of you are aware, the GPA recently adopted new volunteer guidelines at the November board meeting. And we will make those guidelines available on the GPA website. But I want to share a few highlights with you of the changes. First, most committees and task forces are made up of 5 to 7 members plus a board liaison. Some of our committees had grown in size, and we know that from research and from practicality points of view, committees of 5 to 7 members are much more productive and get more work done. The second note is that task forces are limited in scope and are normally established to accomplish a particular task. And so one of the things, and we'll talk in a moment about committee term limits, but one of the things that are somewhat unique about task forces is that the task force members and the chair of that task force are appointed for the term of that task force. So I mentioned the mentoring task force, which was formed last year. The expectation is that the people who serve on that task force will serve for obviously last year and through this year as that task force completes its work. But once the task force ends its work, then the responsibilities of the chair and the task force members end. We have established this year that committee members will serve a 2-year term and are eligible to serve up to 3 terms for a total of 6 years on a committee. We know a lot of people have served on committees for a number of years, and we wanted to make sure that we had a relatively smooth transition. So we have established 2017 as the base year or the first year for tracking service for all committees. So if current members of the committee all renewed their service, they would be eligible to serve on the committee through 2023. we expect that there will be people who will decide not to renew their term of service, and so we should have, we're hoping to have a steady turnover, if you will, in the committee, so that as a part of this process, that we're giving people the opportunity to get engaged in different committees, and at the same time providing some consistency from year to year on the committees. So one of the other component pieces of that, though, is subcommittees. And in regards to subcommittees, each committee can form subcommittees as they see fit to accomplish the work that needs to be accomplished. Subcommittee members serve a one-year term and can renew that term. Subcommittee members are not included in the number of members of a committee. So again, as I mentioned, committees and task forces are expected to be between 5 to 7 members on each committee or task force, but obviously for some task force or for some committees, and I'll use professional growth and development as an example of that, they have a subcommittee on program review and development for the annual conference. That's a much larger subcommittee because of the amount of work that needs to be done in reviewing workshops. So clearly that's a subcommittee that's much larger than the committee itself. But again, that's focused on the work that needs to happen for that committee. Another idea that we've introduced this year, sorry, let me change slides, is that we would like to have each committee or task force identify 2 to 4 items that they will work on this year and develop these work plans to help the committees and task forces continue to move their work forward. So for example, one of the work plan items for the ethics committee will be to complete a review of the frequently asked questions on the GPA website, updating those and making them, making sure that they're relevant and adding new questions as they come across. The expectation is that the committees and task forces will report on their progress on their work plan as part of the committee reports to the board at their regular meetings. So, so the next part is we will talk about board liaisons and their roles, and so I'll turn that back over to Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Okay, so each committee and each task force has been assigned a GPA board member who serves as a liaison, a board liaison to that committee. So I'll just go over the bullets here real quick. First, the board liaison's role is to be a liaison to and from the GPA board of directors, to provide guidance to the committee chair. And I think it's important to mention that the board liaison is a fully functioning member of each committee as far as providing input and that kind of thing. But they're providing guidance to the committee chair. The committee chair is still, you know, the chair of the committee. The board liaison also serves as an active member of the committee, assists with preparation of the board report and the request for board agenda item forms, presents reports and agenda items at the board of directors meeting, and reports back to the committee on any board action. So those are the roles that each board liaison is involved with each committee. And then the next role we will discuss is the role of the chair.
Nathan, before we move on to the role of the chair, I think we have a question. Lauren, if you have a question, use *6 to unmute your line. Lauren, did you have a question for us? All right. Well, Nathan. We'll go ahead and go forward. If you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box as we move along. So go ahead, Nathan.
Okay. So each committee and task force has a chair that has been selected and or approved by the GPA president and is ratified by the GPA board of directors to serve as the leader of the committee or task force. So the chair is the leader of that committee or task force, and their roles and responsibilities are to lead the committee and task force, to prepare and distribute meeting agendas, prepare and distribute meeting notes, to serve as an active member of that committee, prepare the board report and the request for board agenda items forms, and it's with assistance from the board and staff liaisons, to work with the subcommittee chairs to make sure work is being accomplished, and to submit budget requests. And the budget requests also, those are sent to the board, and the board has to approve all the budget requests before we can make expenses in those categories. So those are the roles and responsibilities of the committee chair. And I don't see any questions. So we can move into staff liaison. Mike?
All right. One of the things to note is that the staff liaisons are here to assist the committee chairs and the board liaisons in their roles. So we are, as staff liaisons, we're a resource and a conduit of information for the committee and the GPA headquarters staff. We can provide technical resources, access to files and history, again, working with you to make sure that the committee works in an effective way. One of the things that we would ask is that you share information with your staff liaison, and that you use the staff liaison as a resource and tool for you, especially if you need assistance with preparing the board report or request for agenda items, or even preparing the notes or items for upcoming committee meetings. I just ask that you recognize that each one of the staffs, as being a small staff, we have multiple committees that we work with. So we do try to stay on top of things as best we can, but just ask for your patience and understanding if we're not able to get back to you right away on a particular issue. So I do see we have a question from Janine. Her question is, do they prepare the goals for the committee? And I'm presuming you're asking about the committee chairs. And so to me, that is, and I'll let Nathan answer this as well, but I think that's a work product of the committee, working that the committee chair has the ultimate responsibility, but working with their board liaison and the rest of the members of the committee to develop those goals and work plans for the year. Nathan?
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say the same thing. I think the committee is involved with helping to prepare those goals and put them together, and the chair facilitates that process and makes sure that they're communicated.
Okay. As we mentioned, there are board reports and requests for agenda items due prior to each board meeting. Many of you have completed the request for our first board meeting, but the board meets in person 3 times this year, in February, June, and November. Reports and requests are due approximately 2 weeks before the meeting. Even though we haven't set the date for the June meeting yet, we have decided to set the date for when the board reports and agenda items are due, just so we have time to prepare that report and to give you time to prepare your materials as well. So you'll see on the screen that the reports and requests are due for the February meeting. They were due January 24th. For the June meeting, we asked that they be in by May 24th. And for the October meeting, or excuse me, for the November meeting prior to the annual conference, we asked that those reports be in by October 24th. And again, your board liaison and staff liaison can assist you with that. So your board report, the purpose of the board report is, as a part of the board report, the purpose is to highlight the activities of the committee or task force, their progress on the work plan, and provide any additional information to the GPA Board of Directors. Subcommittees and their work are included in the committee's report, so you don't have to prepare an additional report for any subcommittee work. Just include that work in the committee's report. The committee chair is expected to produce that report, working with their board and staff liaison. The request for a board agenda item is asking for specific action by the board, whether that's board discussion and direction for a particular area or asking for particular board action. If there is a particular board action, or in either case, the board needs a summary and background of the information so that they can have an accurate discussion. And this is where it's important that your board liaison is fully informed about the particular issue or topic so that they can help the board understand what the request is and what the expectations of the committee are. If you are requesting a particular action, we do ask that you include the motion that you'd like the board to consider, financial impact, and implementation and oversight. We do ask for an estimated time that you think this will take the board to discuss, just to assist us with our planning purposes. So I'm just going to stop here for a second and follow up on a couple items that have popped into the chat box. Hopefully my audio has cleared up a little bit. I apologize for that. And I think the other question was to follow up on preparation of the goals for the committees, that we will add that to the chairperson's duties in the report to make sure that it's clear that that's part, as we stated earlier, part of their responsibility to assist or to guide the committee to prepare those goals. All right. Next, regarding the budget, the 2017 budget was approved by the Board of Directors at the November board meeting. Staff liaisons have access to the budget and what was approved and what funds remain. So if you have any questions about that, certainly work with your staff liaison. New budget requests will be solicited in July and August, so if there are particular items that your committee wants to pursue that was not included in this year's budget, we'd ask that you think about those items, and we will send out a request for those items in late July, early August, and then the Finance Committee will put together the budget for the coming year, taking those items into consideration. Just a few notes on logistics as they relate to committees. First of all, Barb Boggs, or your staff liaison, can work with you to coordinate and schedule conference calls, or if you need to use a web platform, we can also assist with that. So if you need to do a meeting where you need to present items such as like this, we can assist you with that as well. Additional resources that are available to the committees include the committee page on the GPA website. Each committee member has access to the committee page on the resources page of the GPA website. We do have access to Dropbox and Google Drive. I know several committees use those portals to maintain files and share files. But new this year, we have added the ability with our new Grant Zone communities to be able to create communities for each individual committee, which would create a workspace and an opportunity for the committee to share documents through Grant Zone and have conversations online through Grant Zone. if you're interested in using Grant Zone as a portal or a place for your committee to do work and share information and communicate, please contact Kelly Romero and we will get your community set up and make sure all of the committee members have access to that community. Speaking of the members of your community, I know that Barb had sent out current rosters, and I believe she had heard back from most everybody to make sure that the rosters were current and accurate as far as you were concerned or knew from your committee. If there are any changes, please contact Barb and let her know that you have any changes. So now we'll open it up for anybody who has any questions who hasn't brought them up. Just as a reminder, all the lines are muted currently. If you have a question, please dial *6 to unmute your line, and we'll be happy to answer any questions, or you can type them in the chat box. I can play Jeopardy theme music if you'd like.
I guess we covered everything pretty well.
I have a feeling we might have.
Well, most people on this call were on this call last year, I believe. So I think we're all most of us are pretty seasoned in this.
Well, not seeing any additional questions. Just as a reminder, if you do have additional questions, please feel free to contact either Nathan or myself. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions and share them with the committee leaders. So just as a final reminder, clearly GPA and the headquarters staff remain focused on meeting the needs of our members and their chapters while positioning GPA and its members as the authority in the grants field. And we certainly appreciate all of your support and efforts to support GPA in reaching that objective. We look forward to working with you this year, and thank you for your time today.